Hello there, my name is Mary Moynihan and I am a writer and a visual artist and artistic director of the Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality. And I am the author of an original performance called The Art of Trees. So The Art of Trees is a live, immersive, multidisciplinary performance that blends theatre, poetry and movement. And the play celebrates the beauty of trees and forests, the importance of biodiversity and our connections to nature. And it is a live theatre show that features theatre, poetry, song and movement, and it intertwines performance with environmental themes and also Celtic traditions. The Art of Trees invites us to walk in nature, to leave behind a world filled with straight lines, computer screens, concrete blocks and clock time, and to explore why tree cover in Ireland has fallen so low, and to reflect on the role trees plays in our ecosystem. As part of the performance, audiences are invited to join us as we walk through history, the history of trees in Ireland, and we walk through nature. So the play is presented outdoors in a park that is full of trees, including native Irish trees. So we bring the audience on a walk about through the park, and we invite audiences to rediscover or discover the magic of woodlands and the history of trees, and to discover or explore what is happening to nature because of climate change and what we can do as individuals and as a community to come together to protect the environment. A part of my research was to look at the history of trees in Ireland. It is estimated that only 11% of Ireland is currently under forest cover, much lower than most European countries. So Finland, for example, is over 70% forest cover. Spain is over 35%, but Ireland has currently only 11%. Now, Ireland was initially, going back centuries, considered an island of trees. We were full of trees, but because of our colonial history of oppression, we were invaded by the English, and we have a long history of colonialism. But as part of that history, there was the destruction of our native forests and our woodlands, with much of our forests and native trees cut down and shipped abroad, until only 1% of Ireland remained under forest cover at the turn of the century, when Ireland gained its freedom in 1923. And since 1923, the new Irish government made a priority to replant trees and to begin growing trees and nurturing forests again in Ireland, until we've come up to what is currently 11%, but that is still very low. So part of the performance was to make the audiences aware of the history of trees in Ireland. But I also wanted to look at Celtic traditions. So we have a culture of the stories of Celts and many myths and legends in Ireland. So I did research on the myths and legends that surround trees in Ireland. And I came up with the idea of a woman called Bridget of Kildare. So she is actually in history and a myth. She is considered a Christian saint, but also an original Celtic god. And the original Celtic god of Bridget was taken over, if you like, by the Christian church, and the story was blended into the idea of this woman called Bridget of Kildare. Now, there was actually a saint called Bridget of Kildare, but what I've done is created this joint character, if you like, that is both god and saint, and she is considered one of the three patron saints of Ireland. And in the performance, Bridget of Kildare returns from the past into the present, and she invites us to join her in the forest and enter the world of trees. So, for example, the original Bridget of Kildare was a saint who founded a monastery, which is very unusual to have a monastery that became one of the largest monasteries in Ireland. It was founded by a woman called Bridget in Kildare, which is known as Kildara, or it is connected with oak trees. And she founded a monastery in an oak grove. So trees are very important to this god stroke saint. And it is the character of Bridget who tells us about the history of trees from the Ice Age to present times, exploring how trees have changed over thousands of years. And she tells us about the history, but she also tells us about the ancient sacred trees of Ireland, such as the oak, the hawthorn, the ash, the birch and the hazel, and about the Celtic traditions that surround these trees where magic can happen. So this god/saint has wisdom as well as science, and she passes on information to audiences about the importance of trees, their links to oceans, and the idea of biodiversity and the connection between oceans, trees and humans. And she invites us to listen to what trees have to say. So she's like a keeper of the trees, asking us to listen to the trees, to hear what they have to say and what they need, and to rewild the landscape, and at the same time to rewild the human soul. And part of rewilding the human soul is spending time in nature with trees and listening to trees and being present with nature. So overall, in terms of concept, the show is a theatrically staged fusion of theatre, poetry, song, dance and movement. And it's a storytelling performance suitable for all ages. And the idea is that it's magical and fun, but it's also telling a very important story. And constantly I'm getting feedback from people about how much they have learned about trees when they watch the performance, but in a very positive and inspiring way. In terms of collaboration with local communities, we did a series of workshops with different community groups, and we explored the idea of trees and nature and what communities can do in relation to promoting climate change. We also connected with different national organisations and local organisations, environmental organisations, such as Hedgerows Ireland, an organisation that promotes the protection of hedgerows in Ireland. And we also did a lot of research based on books that have been published, particularly in relation to trees in Ireland. So, for example, a very important book was An Irish Atlantic Rainforest by Owen Dalton. And this is a book that has been published by Owen based on his efforts to create to rewild a 73-acre farm that he bought. He moved from an urban area, the city of Dublin, to a rural area, the Beara Peninsula in West Cork in the south of Ireland. And he bought this 73-acre farm and attempted to rewild it. And the book is about his journey of rewilding what is basically an Irish Atlantic rainforest. So the book charts that remarkable journey. And he invites us to consider the whole idea of climate breakdown and ecological collapse, and why our survival as a species requires that we urgently transform our relationship with nature. So I took a lot of inspiration from that book. I also researched a lot of the myths and stories from different sources around trees in Ireland. Another great book was Neil Mackay's book, Ireland's Trees, Myths, Legends and Folklore. And I also took inspiration from a TED Talk video, which I would recommend everybody to watch, by an incredible environmental scientist, Suzanne Sinnard. And the video is called How Trees Talk to Each Other. And this is the story of Suzanne Sinnard. Her father was a forester in Canada, and she grew up in the forests. And she went to study forestry, and she came back to work in the forest as